Hello everyone, peace be upon you. Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and stay with me until the end of the story. Also, leave a comment telling me which city and country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far my story has reached. For those of you who have already subscribed, I sincerely wish you good health, ease in all your affairs, abundant blessings, and may all your hopes and dreams come true. Amen. Now, let's begin the story. Morning heat rolled over Coronado like a steady tide, bright off the steel fences and the rows of Humvees idling near the north entry checkpoint. Sailors moved with practiced rhythm. ID scanners beeped, radios clicked, boots struck asphalt in a crisp cadence that said the day had already started before the sun cleared the horizon. Ryan Cole eased his pickup into the lane marked for contractors, one hand on the wheel, the other flicking his sunglasses into place. He'd been on big jobs before, airports, refineries, wind farms out in West Texas. Military base or not, he figured a gate was a gate. He coasted to a stop at the line. Ahead, a woman in navy blues stood square to the traffic, clipboard in one hand, scanner in the other. The name tape read L. Bennett. Her hair was up, her boots were mirror clean, and she didn't waste motion. She waved one car through, stopped another, scanned, checked, moved it along. No rush, no drag, exact pace. Ryan glanced at the palletized crates strapped in his bed. Drone hangar parts, labeled clean, sealed tight. This wasn't his first rodeo. He rolled forward when the guard pointed. "Morning," she said, voice steady. "ID and work order." Ryan passed the badge through the window and gave the easy grin that usually smoothed things over. "Contractor for hangar C-12. Got half a day's worth of gear for your drone shop." Her eyes didn't shift from the scanner. "Step out of the vehicle, sir. We'll do a visual and inventory match." He almost chuckled. "Sure thing, Chief." It wasn't a jab, just habit, but the way she looked at him made the grin fade a notch. Not angry. Not even annoyed. Just measuring. He swung down, feeling the warmth pushing off the pavement. The base had that clean, metallic smell, oil, sea air, fresh solvent from a maintenance bay somewhere upwind. Bennett tapped the bed rail. "Open it up." He popped the latches and dropped the tailgate. She didn't poke, she inspected. Bar codes, seals, tie-downs, all in order. Her hands were quick and precise. She called out part numbers to a sailor at the tablet, and the sailor echoed them back. No extra words. Ryan leaned on the bumper, trying to keep casual. "Y'all run tight for a Tuesday." "It's Friday," she said, eyes still on the crate stencil. "Step back, please." He stepped back. Something about the rhythm put a small knot in his stomach, and he wasn't sure why. He watched the other guards. They didn't hover around her. They aligned to her pace, like her timing set theirs. The lane flowed when she wanted it to flow and stopped when she wanted it to stop. A pair of black SUVs rolled past the outside lane, tinted windows, quiet engines. The checkpoint tightened without anyone saying a thing. Bennett finished a row, then nodded at the passenger door. "Glove box and center console. Standard." He opened both, laid everything on the seat, kept his mouth shut. He'd seen thorough before. This felt different. This felt like someone who didn't separate big from small. Procedure was procedure, every time. She scanned his badge again, cross-checked the work order, then finally looked at him full on. Calm. Unreadable. "What's your timeline to C-12, she asked. "Unload by 9, stage by noon." He cleared his throat. "We'll be out of your hair. Safety brief at the hangar. Follow their lead. A beat. And keep those crates upright. Markings face out. People cut corners when they think no one's watching." He nodded, reflexive. "Yes, ma'am." For a second, he heard his own tone and hated that it sounded like a school kid. He glanced away, sold himself a private story about confidence and experience and how gates were just choke points built to make people feel small. The story didn't land. Across the fence line, beyond the checkpoint, he could see the drone hangar roofline catching sun, the tall doors yawning open on a busy floor. Forklifts darted in clean arcs. A tech wheeled a test rack along a painted path like he'd done it 1,000 times. A Humvee eased up on the inbound side. Then another. The radio traffic at the shack ticked up a notch. Bennett didn't glance at it. She stepped to the tailgate again, pressed a seal tape with her thumb, checked the imprint like she'd recognize a fake by the feel. Ryan folded his arms and tried for light. "You always this thorough?" "When it matters," she said. "And today matters." "Every day does, Mr. Cole." He didn't have a comeback. The lane behind him grew longer, but no one honked. No one leaned out a window. People waited, because that's what this place ran on. He noticed the sailor with the tablet stand a little straighter whenever Bennett spoke. He noticed the way another guard scanned the perimeter after each car, not before. Signals, patterns, small things that added up. She closed her clipboard, handed him his badge. "Move to secondary," she said. "We'll clear you in 60 seconds. Then straight to C-12, North Route. Obey posted speeds. Watch for foot traffic." "Copy." The word came out cleaner than he expected. He climbed back in, rolled ahead when she pointed, and felt the odd pinch in his chest again. Not anger, not even nerves, something he hadn't felt in years. He checked his mirrors, lined up with the cones. The sailor waved him forward and then held him with a flat palm while a burst of inbound traffic slid through the main lane. In the center of it, Bennett stepped out, one hand up, stopping a delivery van with a single controlled motion. No drama. The van stopped on a dime. Ryan stared through his windshield. He thought about all the times he'd leaned on charm to bend rules, all the times he'd talked his way past bored guards who just wanted lunch. This wasn't that. This was a place where rules weren't suggestions, and the person at the center didn't need to raise her voice to be obeyed. The sailor at his fender tapped and gave a nod. "You're good, sir. Follow the green arrows. Safety brief is posted on arrival." Ryan eased forward, tires thumping over the cable cover. He glanced to his left. Bennett had already pivoted to the next car, hand out, scanner up, the flow never breaking. He waited for her to look his way one more time, to toss him a warning, a smile, anything that might tell him he'd passed or failed something he couldn't name. She didn't. She didn't need to. He rolled onto the access road, past the flag snapping in the onshore breeze, past a rack of orange cones stacked like fresh fruit. The hangar grew larger, sun flashing off the doors. Somewhere out there, he told himself, was the reason for all this order. Drones, missions, people who needed things to work the first time, every time. He shifted in his seat, sat a little taller, and set his jaw. "Get it done," he muttered. Behind him, the checkpoint kept time, steady as a metronome. Ahead, Coronado opened into a grid of painted lines and posted signs that didn't care who he was. He tightened the straps on his expectations the way he'd tightened the ratchet straps on the crates. No more shortcuts. Not this morning. Not here. Not this morning. Not here. He repeated the words as the access road curved toward the hangar, green arrows blinking on the asphalt, a steady drum of tires and distant engines folding into the sea breeze. Ryan checked his mirrors. The crates held tight. The straps were clean. He told himself that doing the job right was simple math. Follow the brief. Keep the labels up. Don't act like you own the place. He eased off the gas as a string of black SUVs rolled out from the inner gate and bled into his lane with escort lights that didn't flash, just glowed, quiet and absolute. The lead vehicle signaled, a single tap of brakes, and everything around him slowed like someone's invisible hand pressed a palm to the day. Traffic stacked neatly. No horns. No chatter. Two Humvees angled at the checkpoint, doors opening in one smooth motion. Ryan drew a breath and looked left. Bennett stepped into the lane without hurrying and without hesitation, one hand up, the other resting on her clipboard. The SUVs stopped exactly where she wanted them to stop. Doors opened. Men in desert camo and plate carriers stepped out with that still, balanced stance Ryan had seen on training videos, not on real pavement. The one in front, tall, broad shoulders, scar along one cheek, grinned like he knew every inch of this base and could walk it blind. "Major Bennett," he said, voice carrying like a friendly bark. "Good to see you back on this side of the ocean." Ryan's jaw went tight before he could think. "Major." The word landed like a tool dropped on concrete. No echo, just final. Bennett didn't break posture. She nodded once. The tall man, Patches Red Holt, reached for a handshake. He didn't offer the casual up-down Ryan used out on job sites. This was clean, quick, respect in one motion. Another operator, younger, blonde under a dusty cap, Mercer, stepped around a door with a grin and a look that said this was both routine and not routine at all. "Hellman's story's still making the brief, ma'am," Mercer said. "Heard you pulled aircrew from a bird chewing fire." "Check your manifests," Bennett replied, flat and even. "Then move. You're blocking inbound." Holt laughed under his breath. Not mocking, not casual. Just an easy, earned sound. "Copy that, Major." He looked past her toward the line, then back, and gave a short salute that wasn't for show. "Good to have you at the gate." Ryan kept his hands on the wheel even though his truck was barely creeping. He could feel heat gathering at his neck. He had called her chief. He had leaned on a grin. He had assumed the uniform at the gate meant entry-level to a world that didn't recognize his categories. The lane nudged forward. He followed, eyes anchored to the mirror, watching Bennett pivot from operators to a delivery van like the difference was inches, not miles. She spoke to the driver, scanned, waved him through. The line breathed again. He caught Holt's face as the man turned, the scar-catching sun, the kind of mark a life leaves when it refuses to end easily. Holt said something to Mercer that Ryan couldn't hear. Both men stepped aside and the convoy rolled. No engine rev. No flex. Just motion on command. Ryan swallowed. The access road split, one branch toward admin, one toward the hangars. He took the green arrows to C-12 and felt that small knot from earlier harden into something sharper. He'd laughed at gates before. He'd made jokes that pushed rule lines without crossing them. Today, the lines pushed back. The hangar lot opened like a stage, forklifts, spotters, orange vests, drone frames on dollies with reflective tape along every edge. A safety placard caught the sun near the side door. He pulled into the marked bay and killed the engine. The world kept moving. A petty officer with a tablet, Dean on the tape, approached at a jog that wasn't sloppy. "Contractor for C-12?" Dean asked. "Coal," Ryan said, handing over the work order. "Crates for the sensor benches." Dean scanned, nodded, and looked up with a hint of nerves he tried to hide. "We'll stage on lane Bravo. Keep every label facing aisle. No stacking beyond 2. Safety brief is posted inside. You'll want to hear the last 10 minutes. What's in the last 10? "Ma'am Bennett," he said, and the way he said ma'am had the same shape as Holt's salute, simple, not forced. Ryan opened the tailgate and started on the straps, hands finding rhythm. Pull. Drop. Slide. He told himself to keep his head down. It wasn't new to be the outsider on a base. It wasn't new to be the civilian with the gear in a world that didn't belong to him. But it was new to feel his own voice go quiet before anyone told it to. He hauled the first crate with a pallet jack, wheels humming over painted lines. A forklift operator lifted 2 more from the truck bed with a precision that would shame a surgeon. The operator glanced at Ryan once, then at the crate corners, then back at the floor path. Ryan mirrored the pace. He made sure the stencil faced out. He didn't cut corners. Not here. The words looped again and again, a metronome in his head. Footsteps clicked on the hangar floor. He didn't need to look to know who it was. He looked anyway. Bennett walked in with Holt and Mercer in her wake, not flanking her like security, but giving her space like traffic does for a vehicle with the right of way. She didn't raise her voice. "Brief in 2, she said. "Eyes up." The noise thinned. Not silence. Just attention. She stood where everyone could see without shoving anyone aside. The rules came crisp and short. No hands near prop arcs. No bypass of tag-out. No improvising cable runs. She pointed once at a sensor bench. That one fails, everything fails. Accuracy first, then speed. Her face didn't change. Her tone didn't change. Something in the room did. Ryan's hands were still on the pallet jack handle. He told himself he wasn't frozen. He told himself he was making sure the crate settled square. He listened. He heard the words everyone hears on every job, and he heard the weight under them that he didn't hear anywhere else. Holt stepped forward when she finished. "Team, you heard the major. Execute." The forklift moved. The spotters moved. Ryan moved. He ran the second crate down the line and planted it exactly on the tape, stickers out. Dean appeared at his shoulder, checking the manifest, trying not to look nervous about doing it in front of Bennett. Ryan leaned in a fraction. "You good?" "Yes, sir," Dean said, then corrected himself even though Ryan hadn't asked him to. "Yes." He tapped the screen, then looked up. "Thanks." Ryan nodded and went back for the third crate. At the tailgate, he paused just long enough to glance toward the open hangar doors. The access road shimmered in the heat as the last SUV from the convoy pulled away into the base proper. The checkpoint far off looked the same as it always had. A fence. A shack. A lane. He knew better now. He slid the forks under the crate and pulled. By the time he set the last piece on lane Bravo, sweat thread down his spine and his breath came measured. He checked the labels a second time because that's what the room expected. Bennett walked the line once. No gesture wasted. She stopped at Ryan's row, fingers brushing the corner of a seal like she could tell the story of a crate by the way the tape lay against wood. "Keep them like this," she said. "Yes, ma'am." Safety brief again at 1100. "If you're still here, stand in. If you're not, don't leave a mess for someone who is." "Understood." She moved on. Holt tracked beside her. Mercer peeled off to a tool cart. The hangar swallowed the three of them back into work. Ryan looked at the crates and then at his hands. He flexed them once, the ache just beginning to settle in. He wasn't ready to call what he felt respect, not out loud. He wasn't ready to call what he felt shame either. But the old joke he would have made, some sideways line about gatekeepers and clipboards, died before it reached his mouth. He took the pallet jack back to the rack, parked it where the paint on the floor said it lived, and closed the tailgate. The access road outside glared white. He climbed into the cab, checked his mirrors, then stopped with his hand on the key. Across the lot, Dean stood at a console with a look Ryan knew from apprentices on first big jobs. That ready-to-miss-something look. Ryan slid the key back out and climbed down. "Labels on Bravo are squared," he said, walking up. "You need another set of eyes on the checklist." Dean exhaled like he'd been holding it. "If you've got a minute." Ryan took the tablet and scanned the line. It was straightforward. It was also exact. He checked every box while Dean called the numbers out. When they finished, Ryan glanced toward the door again, like he expected to see her, to hear her toss a word that would put a line under the morning. She wasn't there. She didn't need to be. He handed the tablet back. You're good. Copy, Dean said, shoulders dropping. Appreciate it. Ryan turned toward his truck. The last thing he saw before he opened the door was Holt leaning on a workbench, telling Mercer something that made the younger man laugh and then straighten. Holt's eyes cut to the crates, to Lane Bravo, to Ryan. He gave a small nod that said nothing and a lot at the same time. Ryan started the engine and let it idle. The day outside the windshield looked the same as it had an hour ago. It wasn't. He pulled his sunglasses down and stared through the hangar's open mouth at the slice of road where the convoy had vanished. Major Bennett. The words were still there, solid as the floor under his boots. He put the truck in gear and rolled slow, careful not to clip a cone. Not here. Not this morning. Not anymore. Ryan repeated it as he eased the truck into the outbound lane and then stopped himself. He killed the engine, stepped out again, and walked the long way around the hangar just to bleed off the extra charge running in his legs. The floor hummed with forklifts and low voices. Tape lines, safety cones, tools laid out edge to edge, nothing fancy, everything exact. He caught Dean at the bench again, one hand hovering over a checklist, the other pressing a headset to his ear like he was afraid to miss a word. Brief at 11, Dean said when he saw Ryan circle back. You sticking around? I am, Ryan said. Figure I'll stage the empty pallets first. He took the pallet jack and worked the dead weight out of the way, keeping the aisles clean and clear. No shortcuts. He could feel Bennett in the room even when she wasn't in his line of sight. Not pressure. More like gravity that settled everything into place. Holt and Mercer were at a drone frame with a tech, checking harness points, calling numbers, confirming every latch with a tap, a tug, a yes. No one cut steps. No one tried to be clever. Ryan matched it. He stacked pallets on the mark, swept stray straps into a bin, and shut the tailgate tight. At 1100, Bennett stepped up again. No mic. No stage. Just enough silence for her voice to carry. Update, she said. 2 drones to calibrate. 1 sensor bench out for test. No flight ops today. Safety priority remains unchanged. Accuracy, then speed. If you don't know, ask. If you're guessing, stop. She pointed to the bench at the end of Lane Bravo. That's primary. Any misread there wastes everyone's time. Ryan felt the words land on the back of his neck, cool and steady. He drifted to the edge of the group and listened, hands tucked against his belt like he needed to keep them from fidgeting. Holt added a few lines about sequence and comms. Mercer made a quick joke that got a small laugh and then straight faces again. The brief ended with 1 sentence from Bennett, no near misses. Work restarted. Ryan took the long crate flap he'd saved and used it as a kneeling pad to help Dean trace cable runs under the bench. Dean called out colors and ports, Ryan matched them on the diagram and confirmed the labels with his fingertip before any connector moved. A habit from refinery work, touch the tag, say it, do it. Dean relaxed a notch. Across the floor, a forklift set a pallet down a hair off the tape. The operator started to back out. Bennett lifted a palm. The forklift froze. She didn't scold. She pointed to the corner, then to the tape, then to the spotter's feet. The spotter shifted, corrected, and the forks nudged the pallet 2 inches right. Done. Everyone moved again. Ryan caught himself smiling without the edge he usually wore. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being exact when it counted. You aim smaller, you miss smaller. He heard an old foreman's voice in his head and let it roll through him without the usual backtalk. Cole, Holt called, crossing toward Lane Bravo. You the one who set these crates? Yeah. They're square, Holt said. A nod. Nothing extra. He turned to Dean. Run the sensor warm-up. Dean hit the sequence. The bench fan spun up, a soft rise like wind under a door. Lights ticked from red to amber to green, and a graph slid across the monitor in a steady climb. Mercer leaned in over Dean's shoulder. "Looks good." "Hold," Bennett said from 3 steps back. The room held. She pointed at a number near the top of the screen that Ryan hadn't bothered to learn yet. "Baseline's drifting." Dean swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." His finger hovered. "Rerun?" "Not yet," Bennett said. "Reset to default." "Reseat the second feed." "Verify ground." "Don't touch the third until the second is solid." Dean nodded, hands suddenly heavier on the keys. He killed the warm-up, de-energized the feed, and reached for the connector. His hand shook just enough to make Ryan's shoulders tense. Ryan stepped to the side, not over him, not crowding, just close enough to pass a zip tie when Dean realized a cable sagged. "Thanks," Dean said, not looking up. "You're good," Ryan said, steady. "Port, lock, check." Dean reseated the connector, clipped the slack, tapped the clamp twice, and nodded to himself. "Ready." "Again," Bennett said. The warm-up rolled. The line climbed. The drift slowed. A beat passed. The number settled. "Better," Bennett said. "If it moves again, stop early and find the reason. Don't push a bad read." Holt looked at Mercer and jerked his chin toward a dolly. "Let's stage the frame." They moved heavy aluminum like it wasn't heavy at all, 3 points of contact, 2 calls on every lift, the dolly wheel straight as rails. Ryan kept working small, banding cutoffs, a stray bolt, a tape edge peeling up, and felt the hanger tighten and loosen around him like lungs. He didn't need to be the center of anything. He needed to stop taking anything for granted. An hour later, heat pressed at the doors. The breeze shifted. Someone propped a side panel for airflow. Ryan helped slide a barricade to keep an aisle clear and then heard the tiny sound no one wants on a clean floor, a tool dropping behind a bench. Dean flinched, hand jerking off the console. Mercer froze, eyes cutting down. "Don't move," Bennett said, already stepping around. "What fell?" "A T-handle," Dean said, voice clipped. "From the top tray." "I didn't." "Where?" Bennett said. Dean pointed under the bench. "Right side." It bounced. Mercer crouched, flashlight out. Visual. Ryan went to a knee next to him. The handle lay against a cable brace, not touching anything live, but too close to a bundle he didn't dare bump. He didn't reach. He waited. "Kill power," Bennett said. "Lockout." "Tag." Dean moved slower than before, which was the point. He shut down, verified, tagged the switch, and took a breath. Mercer slid the light farther in. "Okay. I've got it." "Hold," Bennett said again. She looked at Ryan. "You see a path without dragging a cable?" Ryan traced the gap with his eyes, then a finger in the air. "Under the brace, between the tie and the conduit. Wrist only." "Do it," she said. He eased his hand in, fingers flat, feeling for the rubber overmold. He touched once, backed off, reset his angle, and pinched it without scraping the bundle. He drew the handle out slow and laid it on the mat. No one cheered. No one clapped. The room exhaled in the way rooms do when the bad thing didn't happen. "Reset," Bennett said. "And secure your tray, petty officer." "Yes, ma'am," Dean said, cheeks hot. "Won't happen again." "It better not," Mercer said, half a grin easing the sting. Ryan stood and rolled his shoulders once. He let the moment sit. On other crews, that would have turned into a 10-minute blame loop, a story told at lunch, a joke that stuck. Here it dissolved into checklists. They powered up, re-verified, and moved on. Bennett didn't make it small or big. She made it right. Around 2, the hangar shifted to a slower pace. People ate at benches, standing, still talking gear. Ryan grabbed water at a cooler and leaned against his truck door, not hiding, but not center stage. Holt joined him, bottle in hand. "First time working here?" Holt asked. "First time at Coronado," Ryan said. "Done Edwards. Offutt. Couple smaller places." Holt tipped his chin toward the bench. "It's all the same game. Different stakes. She keeps the stakes where they belong." "Yeah," Ryan said. He wanted to say more. He didn't. Holt watched his face a second. "Most folks get it after a day. Some never do." He pushed off the truck. "You look like the first kind." Ryan huffed a laugh. "Trying to be. Try less. Pay attention more." Holt grinned. "That's the trick." They went back in. The afternoon ran like a clean script. A sensor quirk here, a cable reroute there, nothing that threatened the whole picture, everything that required someone to notice before it mattered. Bennett held the line the way she had at the gate, with an economy of words that made people sharper. Ryan found himself anticipating mistakes he would have missed yesterday. He carried a banding bin before it spilled. He parked the jack out of aisle traffic without thinking. He corrected his own reach before someone had to say, "Watch your hands." Close to 4, Mercer flagged him to the drone frame. "You free?" "Yeah." "Help me eyeball this alignment," Mercer said, tapping a fixture. "We're a hair off." Ryan crouched, sighted along the edge, and called out a quarter turn on a screw. Mercer adjusted, checked the gauge, and nodded. "Clean," he said. Then, lower, "You jumped in on Dean right." "Not over him. Just didn't want him to knock the bundle." Mercer's eyes creased. "That too." Bennett walked past at that moment, eyes cutting once to the fixture, once to the bench, and once to the aisle, counting 3 things in a heartbeat. She didn't stop. She didn't need to. Holt followed, scribbling a note, then tearing it off and sticking it on a clipboard. Dean read it and squared his shoulders. By 5, the plan for tomorrow was on a whiteboard, simple bullets in block letters. No speech. No slideshow. A list anyone could point to without guessing. Ryan checked his own work order for the morning and penciled in times that wouldn't make someone else adjust for him. When he finished, he found himself facing the open hangar doors again, wind lifting the corners of a tarp, evening pushing a softer light across the floor. Bennett came to a stop near him like they had planned it, which they hadn't. She looked at the crates he'd staged, then at him. "Better." "Yes, ma'am." "Keep it that way." "I will." "A beat." "Not long." "Enough." "You set your own pace out there," she said, meaning the world outside the fence. "In here, you match ours. That's not about rank. It's about consequence." Ryan nodded. "Understood." "Good," she said. "We start at 0800. Be early." "I will." She walked on. Holt drifted by with Mercer, both of them talking quiet about a parts list. Dean packed his tray, each slot full, each tool accounted for, a small ritual to wash the afternoon clean. Ryan listened to the sounds taper, the fans, the beeps, the last roll of a wheel, and felt the knot in his chest loosen into something solid. Not pride. Not yet. Just direction. He pulled the truck around back, signed out, and took one last look at the gate in the distance, the flag luffing in onshore wind. He thought about the man who had driven in that morning, convinced a grin could carry him anywhere. He thought about the hand that reached under a bench because someone trusted it would be steady. He thought about the word major and how it changed everything without changing her at all. On the way out, the checkpoint lights went to steady amber for a minute while a patrol crossed. He waited without feeling like he was being made to wait. When the guard waved him through, he lifted a hand in thanks, a small thing he wouldn't have done yesterday. The road opened towards Silver Strand, the ocean throwing salt into the air like a reminder that some things are bigger than whatever you brought to the day. Tomorrow at 8, he'd be back. Early, like she said. He wasn't going to chase approval. He was going to match the pace. He wasn't going to talk first. He was going to look, then move. The rules were clear. The tone was set. The lesson wasn't finished, but he finally knew where to stand to hear it, and at 0758 the next morning, Ryan was already on the hangar floor, gloves in pocket, eyes up. The air felt cooler than yesterday, the light harder. Forklifts idled in place. Tape lines gleamed. Dean powered the bench with careful, spoken steps, each action answered by a steady, confirmed. Holt and Mercer rolled a frame into position, hands at the corners, breaths easy. Bennett walked in at 0800 exactly, as if the clock adjusted to her stride. Quick brief, she said. Same priorities. Accuracy before speed. 2 calibrations, 1 systems check, no flight ops. If it feels wrong, it is. Stop. Ask. Fix. They broke. Ryan took the pallet jack to relocate a crate that blocked a marked path, then parked the jack where the floor stenciled its outline. He didn't explain it, he just did it. Dean set the warm-up on the primary bench. Fans whirred. Status lights walked from red to amber. A thin graph traced across the screen. Holt called out reference numbers in a flat tone meant to keep nerves behind glass. At 0822, the first hitch landed. Not a bang. A wobble. A tiny stagger on the graph, then a flat stop. Dean's hand hovered. Baseline froze. Hold, Bennett said. She leaned, eyes on the upper right corner of the display. Telemetry handshake failed. Kill warm-up. De-energize both feeds. Verify ground. Dean shut it down clean. Mercer moved to the back panel and checked a bus bar with the quiet focus of someone who has learned to be allergic to guessing. No scorch, no smell. Contacts look clean. Ryan checked cable runs along the tray, 1 touch, 1 label, 1 look, the way they'd done yesterday. He found a tie that had slipped and sagged the bundle a hair. He didn't yank it up. He pointed. Slack drifted. Could be pressing the feed. Good catch, Bennett said. Secure. Then repeat sequence. Dean clipped the tie, set a new one, verified the clamp, and took a breath like he was setting his own metronome. Warm up again. The graph climbed, steadier now, then smoothed. Everyone exhaled without noise. Proceed, Bennett said. They rolled 30 quiet minutes. Then the floor changed temperature in a way you only notice after enough hours in rooms like this. Heat came off the bench like breath. The fans rose a notch. Ryan smelled insulation, faint, clean but there. The graph flicked once, twice, jagged teeth where a straight line should have been. Stop, Bennett said, voice still level. Full stop. Dean's finger punched the sequence. Nothing responded. It's not taking the kill, he said, throat tight. Mercer's head snapped to the backplane. Breaker didn't flip. Manual? Not yet, Bennett said. Holt, isolate the upstream. Cole, eyes on the run, call if anything touches. Dean, you're on lockout. Count it out. Dean, pale now, forced his tone steady. Lockout, attempting. 1, no response. 2, no response. 3, manual. Holt moved, 1 motion, no panic, body between the bench and the room. Upstream isolated. Mercer's glove hit the manual breaker with a firm, measured stroke. The fans dropped. The graph dimmed, then died. A myth-level silence pressed at everyone's ears. Bennett stepped in. Verify dead. Dean checked with a tester and said, dead. No reset yet, Bennett said. Find the reason. Ryan crouched. The sag they'd fixed held. The ties were tight. He traced one cable with a fingertip and felt a nick, almost nothing, a cut in the outer jacket right where it bent around a bracket. It hadn't cut through, but it didn't belong. He didn't announce it like a trophy. He pointed. Jacket nick. If it shifted under load. Could arc, Holt finished, already reaching for a shield and tape. Bennett nodded once. Good. Replace that section. No patches in primary. Route wider around the bracket. Add a standoff. Mercer had the spare cut and the new route measured before anyone said, go. Dean laid the standoff, hands steady now that there was a map. Ryan held the bundle and kept it off the bracket without pulling. Holt set the shield. Every step got a count, eyes and hands verifying in pairs. When they brought power up again, it was slow. Fans rose. Graph climbed. The line held like a string pulled tight and true. Nobody crowed. Bennett's eyes flicked from the screen to the cable, then to Ryan. That nick didn't happen by itself, she said. We bent too sharp yesterday. That's on all of us. Fix the route everywhere it repeats. Copy, Holt said. We'll audit the runs. They split the bench like a field team. Mercer and Ryan crawled the tray, calling tie points, moving bends wide, mounting standoffs where metal wanted to pinch. Holt backstopped, catching the places people miss when they rush. Dean logged every change and added a note to the checklist that would keep the next shift from relearning the lesson the hard way. By 0940, the room felt like itself again. The graph ran smooth. The smell of hot plastic was replaced by solvent and dust. Bennett called a short break, but no one really left, they just let their shoulders drop a quarter inch. Ryan drank water and didn't realize how dry his mouth had been until the first swallow. Holt leaned nearby. Took the right path, he said. Which part? Ryan asked. The part where you didn't talk to hear yourself, Holt said, half a smile. You looked, pointed, waited for the call. That's pace. Ryan nodded. He didn't say thanks. He didn't know how to say it without sounding like a kid. He just went back to work when the break ended. The next hour turned routine. Routine with better eyes. The bench held. The frame aligned. Dean's hands stopped shaking. Mercer's jokes came back, small ones, time to let tension bleed without lowering the bar. Ryan kept changing the route wherever a bracket tried to make a tight bend, and after the third, he caught himself fixing the tie before anyone told him to, like his hands had learned the next step ahead of his head. Then 11:16 cut across the morning like a thrown wrench. A secondary console chimed in a pattern that didn't belong to any normal alarm. Dean looked over. We're losing comm to the sensor rack. Source. Bennett said. Unknown, Dean said, eyes moving fast. It's intermittent. Mercer arrived in 3 strides. Cables solid. This is logic. Stop all movement, Bennett said. Hands off lifts. No power changes. No one improvises. The room froze. Holt moved to the comm cabinet, popped it, scanned boards with a practiced glance. No burn. No blown cap. Dean swallowed. Could be firmware. Could be, Bennett said. Don't guess. Roll back one version. Slow. Narrate each step. Dean's fingers hovered, then settled. He spoke each click, each confirm. Ryan stood at his shoulder without looking over it, there if Dean needed a word, silent if he didn't. Mercer covered the rack with a shield, just in case. Holt watched the bench for any twitch. The console blinked, paused like it was deciding whether to cooperate, then populated the screen one tile at a time. Green. 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 Handshake restored, Dean breathed. Run a checksum, Bennett said. Don't assume. They ran it. Clean. The day exhaled again, less myth, more oxygen. Bennett looked up, found the room with her eyes, and didn't give a speech. We didn't get lucky, she said. We worked the problem. Remember the order. Observe. Stop. Ask. Fix. In that order, every time. Holt pointed at the whiteboard. Lunch staggered. No one leaves the bench uncovered. They ate in turns. Ryan stayed close to Dean so he could chew without staring at the screen. Nothing spiked. Nothing drifted. Mercer, mouth full, tapped the new standoffs with a knuckle like he liked the sound of good decisions. After lunch, Bennett walked the floor with the quiet that meant she was checking the edges no one else worried about. She stopped at a trash bin halfway full and nudged it under a lid. Don't invite clutter, she said, not to anyone and to everyone. By 1400, they were back to small moves. The big threat had passed, the aftershocks were under control. Ryan found himself tired in a way that felt clean. He wasn't wrung out. He was tightened, tuned. He carried the jack with his hands where they needed to be so he wouldn't clip a boot. He waited a beat before speaking and found that beat made him write more often. Near 1500, a last test run put the bench through a longer hold. The line stayed true. Bennett nodded once and wrote 2 words on the whiteboard, route audit. No arrows. No underline. Everyone knew what it meant. When the shift wound down, Holt stacked a tool cart, Mercer wiped a dolly rail, Dean closed his tray with each tool counted. Ryan checked the crate row one more time, fingers on every band like a ritual he hadn't known he needed until today. He looked up as Bennett approached. You matched pace, she said. Trying to keep it, he answered. Don't try, she said. Choose. A beat. You chose right. He didn't grin. He didn't fish for more. Yes, ma'am. She moved on, and he watched her cross the floor, Holt and Mercer falling in at a distance that let her see past them, not through them. The hangar felt taller, not because the doors were open, but because the ceiling wasn't pressing down anymore. Outside, the light had swung west. The flag by the road cracked in a cleaner wind. Ryan stood there a second longer than he needed to, then grabbed his keys. The lesson wasn't finished. It probably wouldn't ever be. But in the tightest moment of the day, when the graph went ugly and the room went hot, he had put his hands and his mouth in the right order. He had stood where he could hear the call and answered it with what needed doing. He drove out slow, mirrors set, cones cleared, the gate ahead steady and sure, like the day had learned his name and decided he could stay, and the next morning proved it before the clock hit 8. Ryan was on the lot early, clipboard in hand, not hugging it like a prop but using it like a map. The access road was quiet, gulls cutting the air above the flag, that same steady breeze rolling in from the Pacific. He walked the outside of C-12 once like a perimeter check, then slipped inside and went straight to Lane Bravo. The crates were where he'd left them, labels out, bands tight. He touched each band, quick tap, not superstition, confirmation. Dean arrived with coffee and the kind of calm you only get after you've been rattled and didn't break. Morning. Morning, Ryan said. We're auditing the new routes first thing. You good to log changes fast? Faster than yesterday, Dean said, a small grin that didn't pretend it had been easy. Holt and Mercer rolled in with a dolly-loaded cleaner than most shop floors looked at the end of a day. Bennett walked in at 0800 on the nose. No announcement. The hangar announced her by how it stood a little straighter. Brief, she said. Yesterday's fix holds. Today we verify it wasn't luck. 2 route audits, 1 bench warm-up, alignment check. No flight ops. Pace stays the same. If you see it, say it. If you don't, don't pretend. Heads nodded. People moved. Ryan paired with Mercer on the first audit. They traced the cables along the tray, wider arcs where metal wanted to pinch, standoffs now mounted at every repeat bend. Mercer called tie points, Ryan mirrored with the checklist, and they settled into a rhythm that sounded like a metronome if you listened close enough. Tie, verify, tie, verify. No drama. No heavy voices. Exact work in the wake of yesterday's heat. Across the floor, Dean ran the warm-up sequence the way Bennett wanted it, out loud and steady. Power off verified. Ground verified. Energize feed 1. Energize feed 2. Initiate warm-up. Fans spooled. Graph climbed. No teeth. No drift. When Bennett stepped in behind him, he didn't flinch. He kept his pace. Ryan watched and felt something in his chest shift from tension to trust. Baseline holds, Dean said. Good, Bennett answered. Confirm numeric and log it. If it moves later, we have the line to compare. Holt moved to the frame with a gauge. Alignment looks true. Let's confirm the saddle points. Ryan met him there after finishing the first audit section. They sighted along the fixture, traded a quarter turn on a screw, then another until the needle centered. Holt didn't toss praise. He didn't need to. The work answered for itself. By mid-morning, the hangar settled into a cleaner tempo than any day this week. Mercer kept the jokes tiny and well-timed, just enough to bleed off pressure without softening standards. Dean's voice stayed level during sequences. Ryan found himself catching little things before they cost time, a crooked cone near an aisle, a loose strap on a cart, a trailing cable that would snag a boot heel. He didn't look around to see who noticed. He just fixed it. Bennett made a slow pass of the floor. She stopped at the whiteboard and ticked a box, then added one new bullet in block letters, no tight bends. She didn't underline it. She didn't circle it. The board didn't need art. It needed clarity. You're writing policy now, Mercer said under his breath as he and Ryan tightened the standoff. Just listening, Ryan answered. It sounded simple, but it wasn't the way he'd lived his work before. He used to treat rules like speed bumps, acknowledge, then roll. Here, the rules were lanes. You stayed in them because outside the paint was where accidents lived. At 10:30, the base-wide radio pushed out a scheduled notice the hangar barely reacted to. People kept their pace, eyes flicked, then reset. By 10:45, the first audit was complete. Holt marked it done and moved them to the second route, mirror work on the other bench. Ryan took lead on the log while Mercer handled the physical checks, and hearing himself say, verified, with a voice that didn't try to impress anyone felt new. Dean slipped over between tasks. You mind double-checking my note? Ryan scanned the line on the tablet. It was simple, precise, and readable by someone who hadn't been here. Good, he said, then added, change ensure to verify. Means the same here but the second is measurable. Dean nodded, didn't take it personal, fixed it, and moved on. That tiny change would live past this shift, past this week, past both of them if they were lucky. Bennett called for a short stand-down and ran a 2-minute spot brief. We audit routes because we caused the problem, she said. Not once. Everywhere it repeats. Don't rely on memory. Rely on marks and logs. The only shortcut is the one you don't take. No one argued. Why would you? Lunch came in a stagger again. Ryan ate standing at the tailgate so Dean could take 10 without feeling like the bench was orphaned. Holt joined him, forearms on the bed rail like a man leaning on a fence, not a truck. You see the difference? Holt asked. Between what? Yesterday's we almost lost it and today's we know why we didn't, Holt said. Ryan nodded. I do. Good, Holt said. Some crews think the day after a save is a victory lap. It's not. It's where you set the standard higher and make it stick. Ryan didn't say, copy. He wasn't mocking him by default anymore. Understood. Back inside, Bennett pointed Ryan and Dean at the second bench warm-up. No hurry, she said. Call it all. They did. When the curve held clean, she didn't praise. She moved on like that outcome was the only outcome she'd accept. That did more for Ryan than any nice job could have. He didn't need her to like him. He needed to match the bar. Afternoon slid by in clean blocks, alignment check, cable mark, checklist entry, tool count. Mercer flagged Ryan once to help eyeball the spacing on a bracket line. They fixed it in one pass because the house rules they'd adopted made the decision easy: wider bend, no rub, tie points every hand span. Done. At 14:05, a misread flickered for half a second on a secondary display. Dean called it out before it became a problem. Spike on 3. Hold, Bennett said. Confirm. Dean did. False. EMI from the cart rolling past. Reading normal now. Noted, Bennett said. Then keep going. 2 months ago, the version of himself he was finally willing to admit existed, Ryan would have made a joke about the cart being haunted. Today, he pushed the cart along a path a foot farther away on every pass and added a tape mark on the floor so the next person didn't have to guess. That act took 10 seconds and saved 10 minutes for somebody who hadn't even walked in the room yet. That's how places like this stayed alive, not on heroics, but on accumulated discipline. By 1500, the board held more checked boxes than open ones. Bennett penned a final bullet for the day: update SOP, standoffs at all bracket bends, no patches on primary, checklist language, verify. She didn't ask who would do it. She looked at Dean and then at Ryan. They nodded in the same beat. They made the update in plain language with no flourishes. Holt skimmed it, added one small line about tool control with an arrow to Dean's tray, then signed it with his initials and the date. The sheet looked like the rest of this place: direct, recyclable, and not designed to impress anyone. When they ran the last verification at 1600, the room stayed relaxed but alert. Mercer asked for a quick hands check, palms out, no cuts, no pinches, no missing skin. Everyone showed clean. Ryan hadn't realized he'd learned to love that boring confirmation until he felt relieved to see 10 undamaged hands. Bennett called them together at the edge of Lane Bravo. Impact from yesterday, she said. Standoffs prevented pinch on both benches this morning. Route audit found 2 near misses before they mattered. SOP updated. That is what a resolution day looks like. It's not quieter by accident. It's quieter because you did what you should have done the day before the problem happened. No one clapped. The nods were the applause here. As people broke, Bennett stopped Ryan with a glance, then a chin tilt that meant 2 steps this way. He followed. She didn't take him to an office or a corner or a stage. She stood in the aisle by the door where the sea breeze slipped under and spoke like she had a stopwatch in her head and gave him 20 seconds of it. You matched pace yesterday, she said. Today you said it once or twice. Keep doing that, but don't get loud. Quiet is how it sticks. Yes, ma'am, he said. No extra words. Nothing to dilute it. Teach the thing you learned the hard way, she added, eyes flicking toward Dean's station. But teach it with steps, not stories. I will, he said. She looked over his shoulder, folded the clipboard under her arm, and walked away, not dismissing him, just moving to the next necessary place. Holt caught Ryan's eye from across the floor with that same half-smile from yesterday, a kind you can only wear if you've watched enough people either grow up or wash out. Dean came over a minute later, holding the tablet like a baton. Bennett wants the wording on the checklist live by end of day. You want to push it? Yeah, Ryan said. Let's knock it out. They stood side by side, trimmed the language to what mattered, and published it to the list. No speeches, no banner. A small change that everyone would feel tomorrow without knowing who wrote it. By the time the sun flattened out in the hangar door, the floor looked like a diagram again, benches quiet, carts parked, tools counted, trash tied and sealed. Mercer wiped the last smudge off a dolly rail and snapped the rag into the bin. Holt ran a hand across a bracket like a farmer testing the edge of a plow. Dean set his tray in the same slot he'd set it in every day this week and clicked the latches down, 1-2. Ryan took one more walk along Lane Bravo. He didn't need to touch every band now, but he did anyway because repetition builds habits and habits build days like this one, days where the worst thing that happened was a half-second false spike that didn't cost anyone their footing. He stopped near the door and looked at the checkpoint, a thin slice of metal and glass in the distance under a sky that had been blue all week and would be blue tomorrow. He thought about how he'd entered this base the first morning. He'd arrived with a grin he used like a pocketknife. He'd tested the fence with words and found the fence was a person who didn't have to raise her voice. He'd watched a convoy stop at a lift of her hand and a team of operators treat her rank like a fact of nature, not a decoration. He'd felt the day pick him up and set him where he belonged. That was the impact of the heat from yesterday's bad minutes. Today was cooler, steadier, stronger. On his way out, he passed Bennett as she stood a moment by the door, eyes on the floor the way you look at a store you own right before you lock it. She didn't say, "Good work." She didn't need to. She met his eyes once, and he felt the message land clean, "Keep this pace when I'm not standing here." He walked to the truck, hooked his sunglasses on his collar instead of his face, and took the long way around the lot to see if any cone was kicked or any cart had drifted. They hadn't. He climbed in, looked one last time at seat 12, and rolled out slow past the flag, past the guard shack, toward the road that cut along the strand. The gate lights were steady and sure, same as yesterday, but now the steadiness felt like something he was a part of, not something he had to work around. Tomorrow would be another list, another brief, another chance to get it right before something got hot again. The difference was simple and new: he was ready because he chose to be, not because he got lucky. And as the ocean threw salt into the air and the base settled into its evening rhythm, Ryan knew the lesson had room to live past a crisis. Resolution wasn't quiet because nothing happened. It was quiet because everything that mattered did, and it left a mark you could build on. The next morning came without drama, no alarms, no convoy, no heat spike, and somehow that felt like the right way to measure change. Ryan parked, walked the outside lane, and picked up a wind-blown scrap of tape no one else had seen yet. Not because he wanted credit. Because this was his place now, at least for as long as the work had his name on it. Inside seat 12, lights hummed low. Dean was already at the bench, reading the checklist out loud the way Bennett liked. Holt stood by the whiteboard, adding a time block for an afternoon verification run. Mercer rolled a cart into position and locked the wheels with his boot. The day slid into gear without a speech. Bennett came in at 0800 clean. Clipboard under her arm. Eyes scanning corners first, center second. Brief, she said. Same priorities. Accuracy before speed. One audit, one alignment, one full-duration warm-up. No shortcuts. We don't cash in on yesterday by spending today. They moved. Ryan and Dean paired on the warm-up. Steps slow, words steady. He found himself pacing the callouts to a rhythm he hadn't planned: verify, energize, confirm. The graph climbed, held, and settled like a level finally finding true. Dean checked the number and wrote it down in print a future shift would read without guessing. Ryan glanced at him and saw something he recognized: quiet capability forming where nerves used to live. Holt waved Ryan over to the frame. Sight this with me, he said. Ryan knelt, lined his eye along the edge, and called a quarter turn. Holt turned. The gauge kissed center. There we go, Holt said, like you say when a door you built swings on its hinges without scrape. He didn't add praise, he didn't need to. Mid-morning brought a small test in the form of nothing obvious. A visiting tech from another building stepped in, set a tool bag on the floor half a stripe outside the cart zone, and drifted toward the bench with a question on his face. In the old days, Ryan might have let it ride because it wasn't his house and it wasn't his bag. Now he angled in, easy and clear. Bag on the cart, friend. Wheels locked. No edge. No lecture. The tech blinked, nodded, moved the bag, and thanked him. Problem fixed at the size it arrived. Bennett passed and saw the cleared path. She didn't say anything to Ryan. She didn't have to. She paused 3 steps later, pointed with one finger at the cart's wheel lever, and the tech pressed it down. That was the note she left, finish the lock. She kept walking. The day's only real pinch came just before lunch, when a training group requested a look at the bench operation from the observation line. 8 faces behind glass, fresh uniforms, the energy of people who haven't had a bad minute go long yet. Dean's voice tightened a fraction. Mercer shifted to cover him without crowding. Holt stood where they could see him and not get in the way. Bennett set a boundary with a glance, observe from there, not here. Ryan adjusted his pace under the attention without making it a performance. He found a cable brush too close to a moving bracket, called it out with a finger, and fixed it with one tie and 2 words, too tight. Dean logged it without breaking his count. The group behind the glass watched an ordinary correction play out exactly as if the room were empty. That felt like the lesson worth showing. Lunch staggered. Ryan ate by the tailgate again, same spot, different weather. The breeze carried salt and the faint rasp of flag fabric. He thought about day 1 and the man who had rolled in like a grin could open a gate. He thought about the quiet nod Holt had given yesterday when the SOP update went live. He thought about Bennett's line, teach with steps, not stories, and realized he'd done that all morning without naming it. Afternoon settled into the last acts you do when you want a week to end the way you meant it to begin. Audit the places that like to drift. Count the tools you'll need tomorrow. Put fresh batteries in the labeler. Take notes you'll actually read. Dean came over with the tablet for a wording check and caught himself before saying, ensure. He changed it to verify on his own and shrugged like it was no big thing. That made Ryan smile, small and real. At 1500, Bennett called a full-duration warm-up on the primary bench, the longest hold of the week. Eyes on, she said. No drift. No excuses. They ran it, slow and clean. No jitters, no teeth on the graph, no smell of heat. When the timer ticked past the point where yesterday would have gone sideways, nothing did. The line held. People didn't cheer. They didn't have to. You could feel the room loosen, not slouch. Posture stayed tall. Shut down in sequence, Bennett said. Then tool control and floor. They closed the loop. Trays latched. Carts parked. Trash sealed. Someone wiped a smudge off the bench sticker because why not finish as exact as you started? Holt wrote the final numbers on the board. Mercer drew a tiny square beside the audit item and filled it in with a pen like he was punching a ticket. Dean powered the last screen dark and rested his palms on the edge of the console for one breath, gratitude, relief, or maybe just the simple fact of being done right. Bennett walked the floor one more time. She stopped at Lane Bravo where Ryan had staged those crates on his first day and brushed a corner with her fingertips like she could still read the story in the tape. She turned, found him with her eyes, and gave a single nod. Nothing grand. A signature the room would understand even if no one saw it. Gather, she said, and they did, a loose half circle that didn't block a path. Week summary. We had one bad line trend and turned it into a better route. We had a logic hiccup and turned it into a cleaner rollback. We updated SOP. We matched pace. That's the work. No headlines. No near misses. We leave it better than we found it. She looked at Dean. Solid voice. Yes, ma'am. She looked at Mercer. Keep the humor small. Yes, ma'am. She looked at Holt. No words. Holt's grin said he'd heard them anyway. Then she looked at Ryan. Day 1, you tried to move the room with charm, she said, not unkind. Day 6, you moved it with choices. Keep doing the second one. Yes, ma'am, Ryan said, steady. He didn't fill the air. Good, she said. Dismissed. See you at 0800. Early is on time. People peeled away. The hangar went back to its end-of-day voice, fans low, wheels quiet, doors breathing the Pacific. Ryan lingered beside the whiteboard and read the week like a short history: route audit, warm-up stable, SOP updated, verify not ensure. It didn't look like much. It looked like everything. Outside, the flag snapped hard and then fell lazy. The checkpoint light flipped to steady amber for a patrol, then back to green. Ryan took the long path to the truck, eyes scanning for out-of-place cones, a stray strap, any small thing that would make tomorrow start worse than today ended. Nothing jumped out. He climbed in and sat with the engine off for a beat, both hands on the wheel like he was calibrating his own baseline. He thought about that first hour where he'd said, "Chief," like a man who didn't know the language. He heard Holt's, Major Bennett, landing like a tool on concrete. He saw the convoy stopping at a lift of her hand. He remembered his face getting hot at the gate without anyone making it so. He tried to label what exactly had changed in him this week and decided it wasn't one thing. It was the order of things. Look first. Stop if it's wrong. Ask. Fix. Don't skip steps you haven't earned the right to skip. Don't get loud when quiet will carry farther. He rolled toward the gate, slow, mirrors checked, lanes clean. Bennett stood at the checkpoint for a moment, talking to a guard, then turned to the lane, palm up, and stopped a van with the same easy authority she'd used on his first day. Nothing about her had changed to make him respect her. He had changed to understand why he should have from the start. The guard waved him forward. He lifted a hand in thanks without thinking about whether anyone saw. The road took him past the flag, past the cones stacked like fresh fruit, out toward the strand where the ocean threw light around like it had more than it needed. He didn't feel bigger. He felt placed. There wasn't a medal at the end of this. There wasn't supposed to be. The lesson was practical. Respect is earned in the small hours by people who do the boring thing right 20 times in a row. Leadership is the quiet habit of making the next person's job safer and clearer than yours was. Courage is the steady voice that says, "Stop," before the graph turns ugly. He had laughed at a woman at a gate because he thought a uniform meant a job title and not a life lived under pressure. Then he watched men who go where the map is mostly guesses salute her like gravity. The laugh didn't survive the week. He turned north on Silver Strand, windows cracked, salt air cutting the workshop smell out of his shirt. Tomorrow he'd park early again and walk the line before the brief. He'd teach the thing he learned the hard way with steps, not stories. He'd hold his pace when no one was looking. He'd check the corner of a crate and the bend of a cable and the language on a checklist because that's what you do when you've decided who you are at work. Behind him, the base kept time, deliberate and exact. Ahead, the road ran straight enough to trust. He wasn't done learning. He didn't want to be. But he knew the order now, and he knew why it mattered. That was enough to carry him home, and enough to bring him back in the morning, early, not to impress anybody, but because quiet standards are the loudest kind of respect.